Hello and welcome to another edition of the Blackwater Insights series, where we chat with innovative leaders from the ETF and digital assets ecosystem. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Anita Rausch, who is Global Head of Capital Markets SVP at AllianceBernstein. And we are doing a special series highlighting global capital markets practices around the world. And it's great to have you here, Anita. Why don't we kick it off and you tell us about why is capital markets so important to the ETF ecosystem?
I used to say that capital markets is the best kept secret in ETF, but as more and more issuers come to market, and we have organizations like yourself educating on how to run ETF businesses, capital markets isn't such a secret anymore. But I've also said that capital markets is like the grease that brings the assets through the wheel. So there are two main reasons why capital markets is so important to the ETF businesses. Firstly, because the strategy, it's listed on the exchange. So once your sales force sells the investment thesis, the assets have to flow through the ETF ecosystem to get to you as an issuer. So there needs to be the relationship and the management of the ecosystem, which are the market makers, the APs, the exchanges, and the custodians. And capital markets manages the ETF on exchange, and we're responsible for its spread and liquidity, and hence the ease with which assets can transfer through the system. Now, secondly, as inherent in the middle name, ETFs are traded. And again, when a client wants to buy an ETF, they don't send the ETF issuer a check. They have to go out and execute the ETF themselves. So the client has to decide when, where, and how to execute that ETF. So that decision is something that will affect the client's total return and experience with the ETF, because for all the great benefits that the ETF brings, there's that extra responsibility of execution, and the capital markets groups that we were created to help educate and consult on the trading of the ETF. So both of these roles are really in an effort to minimize the cost to the client and create an ease of use for anyone who's looking to buy and sell our ETFs.
When you were talking about clients, what would you say to them when talking about what are the top three things that they should consider before placing a trade?
When I speak to clients about execution, which I've done for many years, I like to talk about the when, how, and where. So for when, first you need to understand what's in the ETF, what you're looking to trade, what the asset class is, and what are the nuances of it. So for instance, if there are European securities, well, maybe you should consider trading the ETF during the US-Europe overlap in the US morning. You always want to try to trade when there's maximum liquidity available in the underlying, if possible, because that's when you're going to get the tightest spreads. But we also recommend not trading at the open and close of the markets, because that's when there's the most amount of uncertainty, which creates wider spreads, which in effect is more costly for our client. So next, I'd like to talk about how, which is because that creates a dependency really on the where. First, I'd like to reiterate that we do not like market orders because that prioritizes time over price, and you risk getting a price that's really far away from the fair value of the ETF. We talk about limit orders and risk market orders, where you use a trading desk to solicit the liquidity on demand that's available in ETFs. We talk about what the client's goals are. We ask if are they selling something similar simultaneously. We look at all the variables and then help recommend the most efficient path. And finally, we talk about the where. Where are you going to execute this ETF? It could be electronically, it could be through a platform trading desk, or calling a market maker directly. It's really whatever the client has access to. So this is all a very important conversation, as this decision is going to have a direct impact on the performance, right, that's experienced by the end investor. This is real dollars at stake, and the capital markets groups are here to help guide clients through these decisions.
But do you think that is it possible for firms to outsource capital markets, and does it matter also in terms of capital markets team size?
Well, first, let's talk about size, because I think that's the easier one. I think the size of the team should scale with the size of the assets managed, the ETFs launched, and the clients served for the most part. But the capital market services, I think, are scalable in and of themselves. And it really depends, but an adequate team can range anywhere from 1 to 10 people, depending on the scope of clients served, the assets managed, and the complexity of the products. But as far as being outsourced, I think it's a very interesting and probably debatable question. But firstly, especially for all new ETF issuers, as we've seen so many come to market recently, as we are one as well. I think it's just really important that you have a focus on the capital markets role, first of all. So because not all market makers, especially in the US, are going to be pricing the 3,000 plus ETFs that are in existence today. So the capital markets effort is crucial to get the ecosystem support. But as far as outsourcing, like I said, I think it's a debatable answer because I think the most important thing is to have someone focusing on it. But for the way AllianceBernstein operates as a large asset manager, we obviously prefer to have that function in-house where I can manage the relationships with not only AB as an ETF issuer, but also as the large traditional existing asset manager, because these relationships within the ecosystem really become partnerships. And that really can't be cultivated by a third party from our standpoint. So in addition, capital markets is such a big part of so many of the internal processes, including product development, sales, marketing, operations, these continual ongoing processes that the intellectual property of the ecosystem and my relationships benefit the firm as a whole. So we've decided to keep this role in-house for the efficiency of the product and execution for our end client.
You from a sales perspective or capital markets, like being able to have access to speaking with clients and then the other people you mentioned in the ecosystem, you have control over that conversation, and you can also bring back those insights internally and make other decisions to help drive the business. I personally think that it should stay in the house as well. So I completely agree with your points. But Anita, thank you so much for your time and your insights. It was really interesting to hear what you had to say. And for those of you who are watching, you can go to any of our videos or other insight pieces at blackwatersearch.com. Thank you for watching.